My name is Chuck Baker. I teach 8th grade math this year at the STEAM Academy in the Ferguson-Florissant School District in North County, St. Louis, Missouri. The reason I teach is, besides that, I just feel gifted at it and I really enjoy it. Is I really enjoy exploring with students where we see patterns in the real world and what we can do with them. If I was doing history, I would enjoy exploring where we see history applying to our real life. If I was doing science, I would look for where science pops up. So whatever that content would be, I just enjoy really being curious about that content and getting paid for it. So many days I walk away after a good lesson, knowing that just I had fun and the kids and I were curious together. I just get a lot of joy out of that. I'm taking this course specifically because I just finished up my gifted program, or my gifted certification classes, but I was 3 hours away from moving up on the salary scale, so this is that class, and I chose this class because I think your philosophy on what gifted education should look like is important because it plays into the kinds of traits you're going to look for in identifying giftedness. I think if you're going to have more of an accelerated program, you're going to look more for just the brightest students. I think if you're looking more at an enrichment program, you're going to look a little bit more for divergent thinkers or kids that look at things differently and want to sit in some content rather than just going on to the next thing. If you were looking at internships, I think maybe you look for more applied learners or kids with entrepreneurial mindsets, kids that want to go be in that real world application of learning. I just wanted to share real quick what I learned this past year. If you've watched Alka's video, you've seen that the STEAM Academy, one of our big missions is on project-based learning, and we've had a lot of training with the Buck Institute, and we've had a lot of practice with that this past year. So one thing that happened to me this past year was I thought that I knew a lot about PBL. I'd done several trainings before, and I could have told you that I knew the basics, but I ended up being really humbled by letdowns of what I thought it was going to look like in my class versus how it ended up looking, and just failures. So that was a good moment where I had to remind myself that I was okay with failure even, and that's part of my educational philosophy is embracing that failure and moving on, taking that feedback and figuring out what you learned from it, and reflecting on it and moving on. So there was a moment in like December where I was really down on myself, and then I had to preach to myself too that that's that moment that I want my students to embrace and to do that myself too. I also learned a lot about the importance about praying for your students and the difference that makes. I feel a lot of dedication to my role as a Christian in a classroom. And I think that a lot of people apply their faith maybe to just being a nice person or being loving, whatever that stands for. But I had a moment with a student at our school this past year that he was struggling, and we were doing all the textbook things that we needed to get him to do better, and we were talking to parents a lot, and just nothing was working. And I had a moment in prayer where God just said, Chuck, you've done everything naturally that you could do. You've done nothing supernaturally. So I committed to praying for this student. Somebody else from the school joined me, and he changed a little bit, and I saw some good things happen from him too. But the most important thing that happened was my heart changed for this kid. And where I had been seeing his deficits and his problems and his ADHD and the issues that he caused for me in my class, I went from that to looking for where he was a leader. I went for looking for the ways that God was going to use this kid to fix my heart. And as we learned about school enrichment model, that talks a little bit about deficit model also, but I learned a lot about just the importance of looking at the good that your students have, and if that you can't see it yourself, then a lot of times you might have to have God do it for you. And all that only happened just by the grace of God changing my heart on that. So I'm going to take that forward next year too. You've probably seen this guy next to me. Last thing I just want to add in there is I've been married for 12 years. This is my second group of online courses. I got my Bachelor of Science in Education from Mizzou in 2005, just traditionally on campus. In 2011, I got my Master of Science in Information Science and Learning Technology, just education technology. I got that in 2011, all online, right before this guy was born, Landon. I have an older daughter, Lucy, who's 8, Landon's 6. We've got a son, Cohen, me and my wife, who is 4, Cohen's 4, and then we got one more on the way right after our class is over on August 16th. That'll be the 4th. So just one more interesting thing about gifted instruction that I think about with my kids is we homeschool the 2 of them that are doing school, and so we get to make the choice of where we're going to do enrichment or where we're going to do acceleration, and it's really good that we can make that choice like per subject and per day that we want to do with the kid. But I think that's a lot harder of a choice to make in a system of a public school or even a private school. So I'm interested in diving into that and figuring out through this course like how to make those choices that are going to be good for every student instead of just making the one choice that's going to fit for all of them.